Go.
Debate, interviews, and breaking news. The Elias Macco Show. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Trudy sitting in for Elias again this week. Well, if you have had to visit, unfortunately, an emergency room in recent days or weeks, you probably well understand this situation. Repeated promises to improve access to care, but once again, we're seeing emergency rooms really struggling under the burden. And in some cases, what we're seeing is that conditions are actually worse than they were at this time last year. This is according to a new report in the Montreal Gazette by investigative reporter Aaron Derfel. He has a long track record of very sharp and pointed reporting on healthcare questions, and we're pleased he can join us on the air today. Welcome back to CJAD, Aaron.
Good morning, Trudy.
What are the indications from the numbers that you've looked at this summer?
Yes, so the average stay of admitted patients across the province is nearly 24 hours, and it's up more than an hour and a half from the corresponding period last year. And there are other ways that they measure this. The average stay on a stretcher, that's up. Average stay of walk-in patients, that's up. The occupancy rate overall, that's up. So by every single measure, it's up. And you recall that Santé Quebec was created in December of 2024 with the mandate to make the healthcare system more efficient. And despite its efforts, the ER situation is not more efficient. It's actually gotten worse.
And it's hard to believe because we've been talking about ER overcrowding for years and years. And I know Santé Quebec is saying, oh, yeah, we're working on flow, i.e. the ease with which you can move a patient out of the acute care of the emergency room and onto a ward. That's been a stumbling block for, I think, decades now. Decades and decades we've had trouble doing that. There's been roadblocks there. Is there anything new this year that you're seeing or hearing about, Aaron?
I think the only thing that is maybe some explanation, observers are noting that at least half of the patients are elderly, and so some of these patients maybe what's happening when you were talking about the patient flow is that on the floors you have patients who are elderly who need to be transferred to long-term care, but there are no beds in long-term care, so they're clogging up the hospital. These are the so-called NSA patients, and that's a real issue. And then from a health prevention point of view, you have elders who are staying at home. They want to be at home. They want to be as mobile as possible. And the government the wait list for home care has gone down, but this might be a kind of statistical sleight of hand because each person is getting fewer hours. So if you're getting fewer hours and there's not someone there to help you, you might take a fall and then end up in the ER. So it's happening at both ends, from the earlier in the process and then later in the process. And this is something that has bedeviled, as you pointed out, multiple governments over the years, and Santé Quebec is having a hard time dealing with it as well.
Earlier in the show, we were talking about that report that referenced emergency room doctors experiencing burnout to the point where 10% were thinking about leaving that specialty and finding other work in medicine or in a hospital or some other type of practice. And others are reducing their hours of availability because they're finding it such a grind in there. Could that be a problem with efficiency as well, that you have doctors and nurses and orderlies who are more than swamped now? They can't keep up. Their efficiency is reduced because they are burned out.
Yes, that's an excellent point you're raising, Trudy. It's not just doctors, it's nurses too, who are burnt out and who are quitting ERs to work in in the private sector. And so that puts more of a burden on the public sector. Quebec has more than 800 doctors who've opted out of the public system to work fully private, including, I think, a couple of ER doctors. And so if you've got the money, you can pay out of pocket to see these, this clinic that specializes in urgent care. So this is what's happening. The doctors are burnt out. They're also very disaffected with attempts by the former Legault government to set benchmarks or to dock their pay if they don't meet certain benchmarks. That was rescinded, but it left a bad taste in their mouths. I wrote about this one doctor, the chief of surgery at the Jewish General Hospital. He quit in part because of that and rising anti-Semitism, but it's a bit of both. And so, and then there are other doctors who have left Quebec to work in other provinces like New Brunswick and Ontario. So, at a time with an aging population, when we need more health professionals than ever, we're facing an exodus. And I think everything right now is mission critical in the healthcare system. If there's a shortcoming in one area, it affects the whole system. And I think that there's a domino effect, a cascade effect, and that might be trickling down to the ERs, which in many ways are a kind of barometer of the fragility of the overall healthcare system.
Any of the people that you've spoken to in any aspect of healthcare, Aaron, do any of them have a magic wand, a magic fix, a one piece of advice for the government?
Unfortunately, sadly, no. But, this issue, ER pressure, they're finding this exists in Spain and in England and in France. This is a reflection of aging populations. Even in the United States, they have issues like this, and across the country. And that's why you're alluding to that study by the Canadian Journal of Medical Association. Burnt out ER doctors are moving to other types of practice because sometimes they're sustaining what's known as moral injury. They have to tolerate things that they shouldn't tolerate, like at the Royal Vic, where you have some patients who are on stretchers in hallways for 4 or 5 days. They shouldn't be in a hallway receiving care. They should be in a bed on one of the floors. So I think that as I mentioned previously on CJAD, I think the situation will get worse before it gets better, and I think it's a function of just demographics. As aging baby boomers require more care and they're going to hospitals, you've got this demographic bulge that's now centered in hospitals and is putting enormous pressure, and that has to work its way through the system.
So things will be better when we're all dead, if you're in that cohort.
Exactly. If we can inject some gallows humor into this,
yes,
into this tough subject.
Yeah. All right. Aaron, always great to speak with you. Thank you for the interview and for your work on this dossier.
My pleasure.
Aaron Derfel, investigative reporter at the Montreal Gazette. After
the newest tracks, let's go. New music and the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.
Time is valuable. Thanks for spending your morning with us. The Elias Macko Show on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
We've talked at length over the past months and years about the updates to the language law as they apply to signs and how companies, in some cases, have had to redesign their signs to meet their new rules. There is, of course, that I think the well-known case here in Montreal about one of the big banner stores taking the name of the store off the sign and just going with the logo, figuring everyone knows the logo. We're looking at this question now, though, through a different lens, that of a guy whose business it is to hand paint signs. Dave Arnold joins us on the Elias Macko Show. He is Mr. Sign. Welcome, Dave.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. How long have you been painting signs?
I started painting signs in Montreal way back when I was just a lad in the fall of 2009.
And did you come from an artistic background?
Yes, in many ways, yeah. I always loved drawing and creating visual arts, and got into painting in kind of my late teens, early 20s, and kind of fell into the business. It wasn't my original intent, but started doing temporary signage for people, and that quite quickly led to doing more permanent signage. And 17 years later, I'm somehow still doing it.
And did you take any training for this? Did you study fine arts or painting or?
No, not really. It was all sort of self-taught. The other time I would cross paths with other people who were far more experienced than I was and pick up, tips and tricks and see how they were holding brushes. But no real formal training for any of it.
So tell us a little bit about the detail involved in the work. Does your work start with a meeting with the shop owner? Is that how it generally goes?
Yeah, exactly. Usually when a call comes in, I'll go and see whoever's calling, and usually the dream is to meet them on site, so I can see sort of see the canvas, whether it's a big window on the front of the building, whether it's bricks above the building, whether it's a side wall that needs a mural. It's always nice to meet the client in person and see the situation and then start the creative discussion from there.
Do they generally have a good idea of what they want, or are you the idea guy too?
It's a huge spectrum. Some people come to the table with everything already figured out, all the conceptual. They have their designs, they have their logos, they have the sizing, the placement, and they're just sort of looking for someone to execute it. And the other end of the spectrum, sometimes people show up with absolutely nothing, no idea, blank piece of paper and a blank storefront. And I'll help them sort of build it to a finished product, and then everything in between. There's lots of sort of gray area between the two.
What characterizes a shopkeeper who's willing to go that extra little bit for a custom-made, hand-painted sign as opposed to getting something just, computer designed and, fast and dirty but does the job?
In my experience, it took me years to kind of figure out what the difference was between those two tastes. And the more I do it, the more I'm realizing a lot of the companies that I do hand-painted signage for, they have put, in their own company, they've put a value on craft, whatever their craft is, whether they're making beer or they're making nice food or they're making handmade clothing. Usually there's some connection between a craft, like a human touch in their work, and they seemingly want that reflected in a human touch in their branding or in their signage, and they're sort of the cherry on the cake. What
kind of signs do you like to paint? Because I assume you have preferences.
Yeah, I mean, these days, the older I get and the more I do it, the more I like a nice, smooth surface. So these days, a lot of the work I do is on glass. Which is, I think, these days my favorite, because it's just a nice smooth surface and everything flows nicely. And then, the opposite of that is someone will call and say, can you paint a big logo on a very, very bumpy brick wall or a stucco surface, and it's just 8 trillion bumps, which is, the process becomes a bit more difficult and a bit more nightmarish. But that, at the same time, when you finish a conquest like that, the satisfaction is immense. But these days, the smoother the better.
And what kind of differences in paint and technique and brushes are involved as you go from surface to surface, from glass to brick to concrete or stucco?
Oh, there's all sorts, depending on the surface, depending on whether it's indoor or outdoor, depending on what sort of sunlight it might receive throughout its lifespan. There's all sorts of tweaks and changes to tools and materials at each job. It's not to say every job is different, but each job does require a little bit of kind of personal assessment to see what will work best.
Do you get much call for murals?
Sometimes. I have done mural work in the past. For some reason, I've sort of fallen into a groove of a lot of signage that's not murals, but more sort of storefront signage, and I do a lot of restaurants. The restaurant industry got wind of me years ago, and I do a lot of restaurants, but it's not to say that I don't do murals. It's just not the primary focus these days.
When you're working on glass for a storefront, are you painting backwards on the inside of the glass, or are you painting right side out on the outside of the glass?
Both. It really, again, it depends on the job. Sometimes it makes more sense from the inside based on the location, or if it's in an area that's prone to, vandalism, sometimes it's best to protect it on the inside of the space. Other times, depending on colors and all sorts of different considerations, sometimes the outside of the glass is a more appropriate surface. So both. In the old days, I always did stuff on the inside. And it was kind of a fun brain twist that the entire sign you have to paint in reverse, which kind of removes the idea of letters, and everything just became either a straight line or a curved line.
It must rot your socks when you see a beautiful hand-painted sign vandalized.
Yeah, it's always a bummer, but I mean, not just signage. Anytime you see something that somebody's put, thought and time and effort and put some heart and soul into it, it's always a bummer when you see that sort of thing getting damaged. And usually, I mean, at this age, I'm 45 years old now, and as a teenager, I wasn't out vandalizing things, but I was a bit more of a troublemaker. And usually when I see nice things getting destroyed, I always write it off to probably an angry 14-year-old boy. Whether he's physically that guy or mentally that guy, I'm like, why are you so mad? Why are you out wrecking everyone's nice stuff?
As you get older, just as a function of age, the physical demands of the job, do they wear on you sometimes? If you have to work high up on a scaffold, or you're standing on a ladder, or that type of thing? Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, it's actually been kind of a nice side effect of the work, is that for years I wasn't really thinking too much about my physical state, but the nature of the work kind of kept me nimble and kept me moving, and as you said, climbing up and down ladders and scaffolds quite a bit, and loading and unloading trucks. It kind of kept me in relatively good shape. But just recently, it's funny you mentioned that. Just recently, I realized I should probably start a little bit of exercise to try to stretch this career maybe another 5 or 10 years.
Oh, you think you only have another 5 or 10 years?
I don't like to plan too far in advance.
Was there any particular job that was a challenge, an artistic challenge, or a location challenge, or where you can point to that and say, man, I did a good job with that. Man, that's my masterpiece?
Oh, it's a really great question. I get that question quite a bit, as really each job is its own A to Z challenge, and they all come with their own satisfaction. Some are a little bit easier than others, some are a bit more straightforward, but each one truly, when you finally conquer it and it's done and it's beautiful and you and the client are standing back looking at it and both you kind of basking in how nice it all turned out, they all come with their challenges. There's not a single sign I've ever painted that was a breeze. You walk in expecting certain things, and 10 times out of 10, it doesn't go as you expected.
Can you drop some names and tell us where we can look for your work, Dave?
Oh, God, I hate dropping names, but the one that really turned the tide from temporary signs to proper permanent signs was way back, the earliest days. Joe Beef, they saw the potential. Instead of doing temporary stuff, they said, can you do the permanent signage? And that led to doing signage for most of their restaurants, Joe Beef and Liverpool House and Vin Papillon. And it's because it was my neighborhood. Like my old studio was right around the corner from those restaurants. But it led to kind of planting my flag a little bit on that block, and now it's led to the next generation of people on that block. That September Cafe and Burgundy Lion Pub, and that whole block is buzzing so much now. It's really lovely that all those folks, when they need signage done, usually they're reaching out to me saying, let's keep the tradition alive. But then it spread so far to other communities and other neighborhoods all over the city.
Well, Mr. Sign, where can people find out more about your work?
If you want to learn more, see some nice examples of stuff that I've done over the years, if you go to mrsign.ca, just mrsign.ca.
Excellent. Dave Arnold, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Dave Arnold is Mr. Sign. After the 11:30 update, Mitch Joel, our tech advisor, is going to be joining us. You know what? Apparently, kids are better than we are at spotting AI, and they think it's fake and lazy and cringe. More on that.
This newscast is brought to you by Supermarché Acavan. Cool off this summer with fresh, sweet watermelon from Supermarché Acavan. Choose from juicy whole watermelons or freshly sliced, ready to eat.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back
2010s, the decade.
to the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd.
And more. All your decade-defining favorites all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.
Missed something?
Subscribe to the Elias Macco Show podcast to catch up.
Available on iHeartRadio and wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh, and another thing that Mitch Joel is going to be telling us about is that the European Union is going after TikTok for breaching online safety rules for kids, saying that its design features could expose minors to cyberbullying or contact from predators. That's because of the ultimate design of the platform. We'll get into that with Mitch Joel after this.
Voices you trust to deliver the news.
Here's what's making news right now.
And help you make sense of it.
What's scaring Quebecers the most?
The key message here, though, is
the station Montrealers have relied on for 80 years. Your station.
Your voice.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800. iHeartRadio is throwing it back
2010s, the decade.
to the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd.
And more. All your decade-defining favorites all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away. On a need-to-know basis, he's got you covered. Elias Mackos, CJAD 800.
Trudy sitting in for Elias. Always pleased when I know Mitch Joel will be on the show. We know him, of course, not just from CJAD 800, but because he is the executive director of Next Era Institute and the best-selling author of 6 Pixels of Separation and Control-Alt-Delete. Hello again, Mitch.
Hey, Trudy. Always good to hear from you.
I've taken an interest in the piece you sent along out of Wired magazine that says that kids, even those who use AI, and that's probably almost all of them, you know, or many of them anyway, know that it's fake. They are very clear-eyed about what AI is, and in fact, it doesn't have a very good reputation among younger computer users. Tell us about this.
Well, I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. What you're seeing is that some kids are actually using the term AI as some type of insult. So what's interesting here is that, yes, to them, it might mean, that it's fake or that it's lazy or, as they like to call it, cringe. But I think it may be one of the first times we've seen this pervasive technology come into the culture. And it pushes back against what I think is the bigger thing here, which is the assumption that young people are automatically embracing new technology and they get it and they love it. So while they might be heavy users of it, and they are, that doesn't mean that they find it cool or like just authentic. And that is a big shift. And that's something that is part of the marketing story, which I'd love to talk a little about, and also part of it being a nice early indicator potentially of what the cultural attitude towards this technology might be.
Well, let's talk about the marketing aspect of it then. What do you think?
So I actually think that this might be the most blundered marketing launch in the history of everything. And I'll tell you why. If someone brings this into your business and you work in the business at an entry level or senior way, you're being told a couple of things that are really disturbing. One, if you don't use it, you're going to be fired. Two, if you do use it and you get really good at it, it might impact your cognition. It might impact how you grow and learn. And also it might replace you. And then third, just socially in society, culturally, it's not going to be good for your kids. Like it's really problematic for entry level jobs. It's going to change everything. So it's not like you're getting this message that this is going to make things better or that you're going to have so much more free time to figure it out. And I think what's really missing in that is the second part of the equation, which most businesses aren't helping their employees or teammates understand, which is, and this is what this means for you in terms of where your value is or how it might shift, but why we think you're important, not this dooming fear. And so you layer that on top of what kids are saying about this, and it's just something else stacked onto this story.
If you were hired as the marketing advisor, how exactly would you spin this positively?
Here's an amazing new technology that's going to change everything we think we might understand about science, about how we work, about how we think about work. And here's what it's going to do to create a delta of value for you. So right now what's happening is you're probably using it as some type of answer engine to do things for you. But we're going to show you how to use it as a superpower. That to me would be the primary way I would start the conversation.
So you would basically convince people that they would be the masters of AI. They would deploy AI to serve them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think there's a lot of agency on many sides of this conversation that we're not having effectively. But as someone who is, a couple months ahead of most because I'm using this stuff and it's quite pervasive in my life, the big shift for me is when I went away from it doing things instead of me and helping me do the things that I already do better, more effectively, and showing me where my actual value lies. I used to think, a lot of my stuff is public, Trudy, and when it writes an article in the voice of Mitch Joel, it kind of reads like me. And then I realized as I kept doing it, these aren't that good at all. What makes it good is when I have the time to write. So now that it can do things like maybe better headlines, it split A/B test that, maybe write some keywords for me so I don't have to do the more blue collar type work of getting a piece live, I actually have more time to be creative, to think about what I want to write. And that's been a really powerful gift.
It leans into the human dimension of your work.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by it being a superpower versus the answer engine.
Do you think, this is coming from a science fiction fan. Do you think that we have been primed to be immediately suspicious and fearful of AI because of the Terminator movies? And I say that with a laugh, but honestly,
no, I hear you.
The underpinning for a lot of fear is that these things are going to take control of systems that right now may be keeping us safe, but in future could mean our doom.
So because we're both science fiction nerds, I would delta what you're saying and ask, why is it in a world where we've had some pretty creative individuals make up a future that doesn't exist that we have to suddenly build it? Why do we have to move in that direction? Why can't we use it for science and work and in ways that makes us way more effective and learn and grow more? And maybe for some people that'll mean less work and maybe the economy will shift a little bit, but we can use it in a powerful way. So that's the greater story, is if we want to use science fiction as some type of lighthouse, that's fine, but we don't have to have it be the dystopian destruction lighthouse. We can be optimistic and use it in ways that really add value to the human experience versus extracting it.
Yeah, I suppose that. In the defense of the science fiction fans, I think that the stories we've been because these are modern, it's modern fairy tales, right? The science fiction stories, they have prompted, for example, people to get ahead and become very vocal about not having autonomous weapons systems in defense departments, always insisting that even the Pope, I believe, has weighed in on whether there should be a human decision maker for lethal defense systems. So, even as we build these systems or grow these systems, if they're not, this was a huge word at the beginning, it's still important to many people, but alignment. We need to make sure that as we're growing these types of intelligence, that they are aligned with the values of the organization, of the people, and that we're not heading down a path where we're creating tools that are going to hurt us more than help us. I mean, this is always the case. And fortunately or unfortunately, technology is always somewhat ambivalent. It can be used for good and bad. Think about fire and other things that we've had that are technological innovations. And that's just the nature of them. It's going to be us, and as Steven Pinker calls them, the better of our angels, to really set the path correctly. This texter, I think, kind of summarizes your experience with AI when you figured out what your human talents could bring to the equation and then what AI could do just to support you. AI should be treated like tools to help you do your work, not a technology to be trained to do the job instead of you.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, and look, what we might see in a world where kids find the word cringe or use it as some type of euphemism for not real or bad, the future premium may not be those who have access to a lot more tokens using AI, but it may actually be the human effort, right? So in a world where everything comes out in this polished, cheap kind of AI way, maybe the real differentiator becomes care and agency and thought.
It is always thought-provoking to speak with Mitch Joel. Thanks very much, Mitch.
Thanks, Trudy. Have a great day.
Mitch Joel, Executive Director of Next Era Institute and best-selling author of 6 Pixels of Separation and Control Alt.
You've heard the chaos. Now you can see it. Oh my gosh. Watch all your favorite podcasts from start to finish right inside the free iHeartRadio app.
Gets the blood going, huh?
Catch every laugh and eye roll on shows like the Tom Green Farmcast and Park the Bus. Now with full video.
We're building a ramp for Tony Hawk.
It's the same hosts and the same chemistry with all the hilarious moments you've been missing right on your screen.
Cheers.
Open the free iHeartRadio app, search video podcasts, and tap watch.
The Elias Macco Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
And you probably heard word that there were actually 2 tornadoes in Quebec last week during that storm front that blew through the region. We've heard more about the one in Harrington. We had the mayor of Harrington on this show last week. The second one, and the second one to be confirmed, was in Saint-Donat. That's in the Lanaudière region. It was near Lac Beauchamp. The 2 locations about 50 kilometers apart, Harrington and Lac Beauchamp. Here to tell us more about how these confirmations are made is Dr. David Sills, director of the Northern Tornadoes Project. Dr. Sills, good morning.
Good morning.
The Northern Tornadoes Project was the source of the confirmation. You have some data to share with us too. But first of all, how do your teams confirm that it was in fact a bona fide tornado and not some other weather phenomenon?
Sure. Yes, the Northern Tornadoes Project. So we do this right across the country. Can send teams anywhere from coast to coast to coast. And in this case, we had sent a team. And sometimes we know ahead of time that there was a tornado if we can have verified video or a photo of the tornado ahead of time. Then we know it was a tornado. And we're just trying to get the intensity of the tornado in that thing. In this case, it was mostly damage that we knew had happened. And so the team not only had to find out the details of the damage, but tried to get an idea if it was a tornado or a downburst that caused the damage. And what we do is we look for certain patterns, because with a tornado, you're looking for a long, narrow path of damage. It's usually a 10 to 1 as far as the length versus the width, or more. And in this case, that was the case. Though it was a very wide tornado. Like the Harrington tornado, the EF1, was 1.1 kilometers wide and about 14.5 kilometers long. So, fairly wide, especially for an EF1 tornado, which is down closer to the bottom of the scale, even though, it's still high impact, but tornadoes can get a lot worse than that. The Saint-Donat tornado was actually like 10 times less than that. It was only less than 1 kilometer long and about 100 meters wide. And it actually formed from the same storm. The same storm kept on moving to the northeast, and about an hour later, and like you said, about 50 kilometers to the northeast, a second tornado developed with that same storm.
The Harrington tornado, when I saw that length, that it was on the ground and causing damage, 14 kilometers, that seemed long to me. But is it actually long, or is it average? Or
that's closer to average. Sometimes we've had tornadoes that have caused damage more than 50 kilometers. The record in Canada is actually 110 kilometers.
Ooh.
So,
where was that one? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that was with the May 31st, 1985 Barrie area tornado in Ontario. And so that one went through Tottenham, so north of Toronto. And it was an F4 tornado. We used to call it F4. Now it's EF4. And so the stronger the tornado, generally you get a longer track. It's a longer lived storm and a longer lived tornado. So a longer track and a wider track. So that's why it's sometimes unusual when we see a weaker tornado with a 1 kilometer wide damage path. But there's a lot of variety in these tornadoes. So that's one of the reasons we assess these things on the ground, is because sometimes what may look like a tornado initially as far as the damage path, we find out later that it's a downburst, and then vice versa as well. So the best way to know is get down right to the ground and look at all of the damage that's occurred, and also we get drones up, and then we get a bird's eye view of all of the damage and get a much better idea of the length versus width. And sometimes you also see the tree fall in a certain pattern with a tornado. It'll be like a rotation pattern or a convergence pattern. That's really telltale for tornado damage, whereas with a downburst, it's usually this wide area of trees all down in the same direction.
What's a convergence pattern?
It's like when you have trees on either side of the path pointing towards each other. And that's because with a tornado, you've got air near the ground that's moving towards the storm and then up into the storm. So trees that fall will fall towards this center line of the tornado. Whereas with a downburst, you've got air that's coming out of the storm and then down to the ground and spreading out. And in that case, either you have trees that are all in one direction, or they're actually spreading out from each other. So the two patterns are fairly different, and that's one of the ways we can tell whether it was a downburst or a tornado.
When I read that you're using drones now to get the aerial view, I thought that must speed up your work a little bit if your teams on the ground can put up a drone and get the bird's eye view.
It does and it doesn't, because sometimes we get hundreds of images, drone images, because sometimes it's really hard from the ground to see what has happened, because the road network is pretty sparse or that kind of thing. So you end up having to put the drone up a bunch of different times. We actually have a couple drones that have this feature where you can actually program in the area you want it to cover. It'll launch, it'll go back and forth, building this picture, come back for a battery change, go back out, and keep doing that until it's done. And then you get this really big image of very high resolution imagery, and then you can really see all the details along the entire track. That takes some time to do, but in cases where either we can't tell from the surface, from the ground, whether it was a tornado or not, or if we just want to capture this particular case, we can certainly do that kind of, it's called an orthomosaic.
To your mind, what are some of the benefits of gathering ever more detailed data on these storms and the damage that they cause? Where do you see this leading?
Right. We've been doing this their 10th season, and we've gathered so much data from Canadian forests, excuse me, that we actually have the biggest database in the world of such damage. And so researchers are coming to us from the U.S. and other places, looking for our data so that they can do their studies of, there's various things they can do. They can look at whether the radar signatures that they're seeing match what happened on the ground, or what kind of wind process is generated by a storm and what kind of damage that creates. So there's the science part. We also provide tornado warning verification. So all of the tornado warnings across the country, we have all of the tornado data, so we pair those up, and then we can see if a tornado warning was successful or not. We actually have put out 3 report cards for that now, and they've been increasingly getting better, so this is good news.
What is the hit rate on average for a tornado warning?
Yeah. When we do these report cards, we use Environment Canada's internal targets, and it's basically a 50% hit rate, like you said, on that's the target for tornado warnings, and then also the 10-minute lead time is the target.
Oh.
And it's really hard to hit, and that's why those numbers are kind of modest. And when we did the first report card, the score was in the 30% range because the scores were low. But we made some recommendations about how to improve the scores, different ways for forecasters to think about tornado warnings. And the next report card we did was a pass, and then the next one we did got a C grade. So it's getting better. There's still a lot of tornadoes that get missed, but it's a big country, and it's one of the biggest challenges in meteorology, getting a tornado warning out with lead time so that people can take action. Carry
on for the sake of all of us, Dr. Sills.
Exactly.
I appreciate the work that's being done there, and good luck in future with your research.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Dr. David Sills, director of the Northern Tornadoes Project. I'll be back in a sec.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Big thanks, Jay Farrar, Maxim Cadat in Master Control. Your help greatly appreciated. Folks, enjoy your afternoon.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.